Hey, what's up? I'm pretty excited about today because, like with history, if we analyze what has come before, we can learn what works and what doesn't work. So, this new playlist, the first video of that playlist called Prose Become a Pro at Prose, gives me a chance to break down prose from the pros out there in the world. Today, we're diving into George R. R. Martin's Game of Thrones, starting with the first chapter, but only the first page, of chapter, to dissect the prose and understand what makes it so captivating. We'll break down Martin's choices, his sentences, exploring how each passage propels the plot, enriches the character development, and builds the rich, immersive world of Westeros. Now, more importantly, I'm going to guide you through the pacing and word choices that contribute to the book's iconic atmosphere. So, this is basically, obviously, he doesn't need a development editor. This is more, we're going to look at the writing, we're going to analyze the writing, and by no means whatsoever is his writing something that should be compared to your writing. In no way is his writing better than your writing. It's just that his writing is his voice, his own style. It's also much older than yours, 1996, right? So we're looking at it not to say this is what great writing needs to be and you need to write like this. That is not what we're saying today. We're just analyzing just the way people write and their style and their voice, just so you can not compare, but analyze how he's using certain tools and craft, and then how do you implement that with your voice. So, for example, you do need plot to move, you do need character development, and you do need world building. But more importantly, the way you flow sentences are as important. But the word choices you make is all up to you. But tools are tools, right? So, before we really get into it, I want to talk about a couple quick things. For example, what is Game of Thrones, right? Before we get started, for anyone who doesn't know, Game of Thrones is the first book in George R. R. Martin's epic fantasy series, A Song of Ice and Fire. We probably all know that. And originally, it was published in 1996. The reason I'm bringing that up is because writing has evolved and changed over the years. And some of the things we're going to learn and discover about his writing might not be specific to writing of today. In fact, his writing in future books from this book have evolved and changed, as all authors do, which is going to be something that we will explore throughout the series, okay? Going back to authors, etc., etc. But being that it was originally published in 1996, this novel quickly garnered acclaim for its complex storytelling, deeply flawed characters, and the brutal, unpredictable nature of its plot. Now, Martin's work broke away from the classic hero narrative of early fantasy, offering instead a gritty, nuanced take on political intrigue, morality, and power struggles, creating the morally gray characters. The book's acolytes include multiple awards, such as the Locus Award for Best Fantasy Novel, and it has been embraced by a worldwide audience, both avid readers of epic fantasy and those new to the genre. Now, Martin crafted this story primarily for an adult audience, appealing to readers who relish mature themes, layered characters, and a realistic portrayal of human ambition and frailty. So keep that in mind when we go over the first page of prose. All right, let's do it. Let's analyze the prose of prose. Okay. Again, this is for educational purpose only. I am a writing teacher, author, and developmental editor. Oh, and of course, the obvious spoiler alerts. This is chapter 1, Bran. Who's Bran? All right, we're going to get rid of that so we can just focus on this. All right, so before we get into the deep of it, what are these red things over here? Well, stuff is happening, but nothing is happening. What does that mean? It means we are going to be looking for when things are happening, but nothing is happening. And to define what that means, is happening, okay? When stuff is happening, but nothing is happening, we're talking about plot, character, and world building, okay? It means that every sentence has to have one or more of these three elements. It has to have plot, It has to move the plot forward. It could have character development as well, or just be character development, and there should be world building. If it's description for description's sake, or if it's just moving things along with no true, if it's just exposition, then it's stuff is happening, but nothing is happening. So let's go over that. Now, I have pure exposition here. This is if like the story stops and it goes, this castle has been here since the third trimble of the boom boom blah 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 in 1970 of the 80th year of 777 when Kaiser was the cruiser of the poo 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 poo. Right? That does nothing. It does that did not move the plot. It is not character development, and because it's pure exposition, the world building kind of falls short. Okay, it doesn't technically fall under world building because it's just informing you of a lot of stuff. All right. We also want to look for challenging positions and choices because remember, plot is what needs to happen. Story is the emotional experiences of the characters being challenged and stuff like that, right? Okay, so those are important things to keep in mind. So let's do it. All right, let's read. The morning had dawned clear and cold with a crispness that hinted at the end of summer. The morning had dawned clear and cold. Now this falls under, as I might say, this falls under plot, okay? All right, but it also falls under world building. The morning had dawned clear and cold with a crispness that hinted at the end of actually this is straight plot. We're informing the time, right? But this is something that's very important. This is going to be through Bran's perspective, okay? So this is also character development because this is what Bran is. It's through his POV. So these are the things that are important to him. He is recognizing that this is the morning and it had dawned clear and cold with the Christmas that hinted at the end of summer. Okay. They set forth at daybreak to see a man beheaded, 20 in all, and Bran rode among them, nervous with excitement. So this is plot. Let's just do that, just so the sentences are broken up. So right away, we have, oh, I could do this. Okay, right away, it starts off with this is all character development because it is the experience of what he's paying attention to, and then it's informing the plot still. The plot is moving. They set forth at daybreak to see a man beheaded, 20 in all, and Bran rode among them, nervous with excitement. So we know that we are developing the character. Now, there's a couple things I'd like to point out. This is what we would call telling, right? We are telling what's going on. Maybe we can do this. Oh, hey, how's it going? All right. So I got two screens here. So just keep in mind my control and whatever. But my camera's here. So this is considered telling traditionally, right? Oh, he's nervous. He's nervous with excitement, right? Now, someone might tell you, oh, Thomas, why don't you write, Bran rode among them twitching or shifting his pony's lead in his hand, a grin, contemptive grin or something, a hesitant grin and excitement, flowed through stage stiff in his shoulders or something like that, right? Because sometimes telling just adds the context and just get through it. You don't have to always show everything. All right. There is very little showing with that moment, but the morning had dawned clear and cold. Okay, that is immersive. We're getting a sense of it's clear and cold, right? With a crispness that hinted at the end of summer. So this is also allowing immersion because it has sensory elements to it. And then this is just plot and character. So they set forth at daybreak to see, but also they set forth, right? The style of writing is also giving, because again, it's in the POV of Bran. So it's giving a sense of Bran's voice, right? This is how they talk. they set forth at daybreak to see a man beheaded, 20 in all, and Bran rode among them, nervous and excitement. All right, let's keep going. Here's some more. This is exposition. All right, but let's see what happens. This was the first time he had been deemed old enough to go with his lord father and his brothers to see the king's justice done. All right, so this is, let's get this with this color. Boom. So this is character. All right, and this is world building, and it is plot. Okay, this was the first time. Oh, now it is exposition, but it's through the narrative of Bran's POV. So this was the first time he had been deemed old enough to go with his lord father and his brothers to see the king's justice. A king's justice is world building. All right. He has to be old enough to witness the king's justice. That is world building. There's age and all these other elements are a part of it. Okay. We're learning more world building. We're learning as brothers. Okay. The character development is that this is his first time, okay, that he gets to see the thing. And the plot is that that's what they're doing, is they're going for the king's justice. So if you notice, so far the plot has been integral in each of these three sentences. All right. More importantly, they have been through the POV of Bran. All right. And then there's some world building. And then, of course, we get this, which is, let's go back to this color. It was the 9th year of summer and the 7th of Bran's life. That is world building and character development. It isn't necessarily plot. And the character development is that we are learning that Bran is thinking that about his this is his 7th year. So we have developed his character. We know that he is 7 years old. All right. And it was the 9th year of summer is world building. It isn't necessarily plot, though. But again, remember, stuff is happening, but nothing is happening means that there is no plot, character, or world building happening. It's just description, which could have just, by the way, what would that look like? Maybe you're asking. The morning had dawn, clear and cold, with a crispness that hinted at the end of summer. The sky blue with a touch of gray lingered in the distance. Horses neighed, and the far sight of endless land covered the hills with grass and trees and patches of trees. And then, like, let's say the next thing is, let's say they set forth at daybreak to see a man beheaded. 20 in all, and Bran. Can't even read this. Among them, nervous with excitement. All right. So if I was editing this and I was doing some developmental editor, all this, I would say stuff is happening here, but nothing is happening. There's no plot, there's no character development, and there's no world building. But Thomas, they're talking about how the fields are grass and there's trees. Yeah, but that's something that's common. That doesn't add any. The 9th year of summer is world building. The fact that there's a king's justice changes the way our natural world, we understand the order of their world. That's what creates world building. It creates a sense of information or law, culture, things like that. But the fact that the morning had dawned clear and cold with the crispness that hinted at the end of summer, right? Because it's not in the POV of anyone in that passage, that first sentence now becomes stuff is happening, but nothing is happening. It's just pure exposition now, because it's not through the emotional experiences of the character and or their choices or challenges to those choices. All right. And that's what makes the difference between adding the POV of Bran versus just describing stuff. Because who cares that the sky, blue with a touch of gray, lingered in the distance, horses neighed, and the far sight, should spell correctly, the far sight of endless land covered the hills with grass and patches of trees. It does not, it's just description. But again, if you added if you did all, you would have to, this is how easy it is. You just have to just do this. Boom. All right. And now what happens is, this is Bran's POV. He wrote him nervous and excitement. And now we know that he's looking at the sky blue with the touch. We don't have to say Bran looked at the sky, because that's a filter word. You just have to describe what's happening. And we know that the POV is the one taking note of it. So the sky, blue with a touch of gray, lingered in the distance. Horses neighed. I don't have to say he heard the horses neigh. I don't have to say Bran rode among horses neighing, right? No, he rode among them. We already have that. So now let's describe that. Horses neighed in the far side of it. I could even do this. Could even give it order purpose. So it has pairs. So he wrote them. So there we go. So now we open it up. Then we put Bran's POV into it. He's excited and nervous. And now what is happening around him? Let's describe that. Horses neighed, and the far side of endless land covered the hills with grass and patches. Where does that lead him? It naturally leads him to see the sky, because it's now creating the camera movement, right? The sky, blue with a touch of gray, lingered in the distance. And that also has thematic elements to it, because he's heading to a beheading, which we would learn shortly after this moment, right? And that's the difference between it being just pure exposition or description versus it being having a touch of plot, having a touch of character development, having a touch of world building. As long as it's through the POV of somebody, you are going to at least give a touch of truth to it. Because if a character notices that the morning had dawned clear and cold, that's more interesting than just describing it. That's like watching a movie and the only thing you see is that the sun is rising, and it's still rising, and it's rising some more, and then it sets. But if a character is watching that sunset, it now has emotional truth to it. There's purpose to it. Anyway, let's keep going. All right. And the reason I went on that tangent is because, you want things to be happening through the POV of characters. So just remember that. One thing that we're learning here is nervous with excitement. Again, you don't have to show everything. Sometimes it's okay just to keep the pacing going. You want the pace to breathe. All right. And these sentences, if you notice, each sentence has a different length to it. Right. This has let's see. This is 17 words. Okay. And then let's see. This is 21 words. 26 words, and then a quick beat. 13. All right. And that's how, when he's writing, if you notice, he's driving you through the moment. The morning had dawned clear and cold, with a crispness that hinted at the end of summer. All right. So now that's the atmosphere. Let's pull us into the POV. They set forth at daybreak to see a man beheaded, 20 in all. And Bran, we give value to that POV, rode among them, nervous with excitement. There's an emotional truth now. This was the first time. Now, this is context and telling, but it is moving the plot forward. And it is what Bran is thinking, without it saying Bran thought about how this was the first time they had been deemed, right? But this was the first time he had been deemed old enough to go with his Lord Father and his brothers to see the king's justice done. And because it is his brothers and his Lord Father, it is his POV. So this is what he's thinking about, but it is not in italics, nor is it stopping the narrative to use a filter word going, he thought about how this was the first time he had been deemed old enough to go with his Lord Father and his brother, right? So, and then, of course, why would it was the 9th year of summer and the 7th year of Bran's life be important? Because Bran is thinking about how this is the first time he had been deemed old enough to go with his Lord Father and his brothers. Now we have to answer that. And logically, what would be what he's thinking about? How he is 7 years old, and this is the first time he's getting to do this. And it's been the 9th year of summer, which explains the Christmas. Okay? So let's keep going. Let's move it down a little bit. All right. The man had been taken outside a small holdfast in the hills. This is plot. Okay. Rob thought he was a wildling, his sword sworn to man's rider, the king beyond the wall. All right. So this is world building. The king beyond the world, man's rider. This is also world building, but it's technically also exposition, but it's through world building. So that's what makes it okay. Rob thought he was a wildling. This would be Rob's POV, but in the next moment we realize it's still Bran. So that means Bran's thinking about how Rob thought. So instead of creating the filter, Bran, the idea that Rob thought the man was a wildling lingered in Bran's mind. We don't have to do that, and we don't have to do it. We don't have to do this either. I don't have to italicize this because it's still thought, but we know we're in the POV because it's about to be set, which then changes all this to character. This now all becomes character development because he's thinking about the information. The man had been taken outside a small holdfast. So this means that Bran is informed of this. And that's what they talk about when I'm sure you hear write your prose in the POV of your characters. So what, and this is, by the way, third person limited. This is not omniscient. So it's only what Bran would know. So now we know that Bran knows these things. And we also know that Bran knows that Rob thought the man was a wildling, right? His sword sworn to Mace Rider, okay, the king beyond the wall. It made Bran's, so this, because he's thinking about these things, character development. Boop. There we go. It made Bran's skin prickle to think of it. All right. So because he is thinking of these things, the man had been taken outside, and Rob thought he was a wildling, all this stuff. Now, here's something I have over here: challenge, positions, and choices. Okay. We are challenging positions. Bran has to have a position here, right? And that position is that Rob thought he was a wildling. So Bran's position is that wildlings are scary, or like, not, or at least it's setting that up, right? Because what's the next thing that happens? We challenge the fact that Bran stands by that the wildlings are dangerous. And literally, what do? We explain that truth. He remembered the hearth tales old Nan told him. This is more character development. Boop. Okay, and what was it? Oh, here it is. The wildlings were cruel men, she said, slavers and slayers and thieves. And again, this doesn't have to be an italic. It doesn't have to be italic, because we know that this is just through his POV. So he's getting so this is all character development. These are all the emotions going through him and all the things, all the concerns. And this is also world building, by the way. This isn't plot yet. Okay, this is world building and character development. So it allows it to have stuff happening with purpose. So it's not just stuff happening, but nothing is happening, because it's not this description for description's sake. And it's not just stopping. Like, for example, if it just stopped the narrative and then the next, let's say the passage was just Mance Reiner was the king beyond the wall. He controlled and ruled the wildlings. That's just exposition for exposition's sake, and that does not help with plot, character development, and world building, because it is not through the emotional experience of characters. Now, remember, a narrative is made of a plot and story. Plot is what needs to happen no matter what, and story is how it unfolds through the emotional experiences of the character and their choices and challenges of their positions. So if it's just exposition to quote unquote build the world, it's not necessarily doing its job. Everything has to be through the POV of something, including when it's a third person omniscient, because who is it going through? It's the POV of the God, of the narrative God. The omniscient God has a POV. In fact, the way you would write your prose would be through the narrative God, the omniscient God in third person omniscient, because they would have an opinion. They would have a thought. They'd an omniscient would be like, it made Bran's skin prickle to think of it, but how why wouldn't he be nervous? This is the first time he's ever done this. There was a time when he was a child and frogs were he was afraid of frogs. But children, am I right? Like, that's an example of an omniscient brain. Like, they have thoughts and opinions of things. But anyway, so real quick, I want you to see that it has what we call a movement, all right, or a flow, and each thing is narratively and purposefully leading into itself. So Bran is thinking about the man had been taking outside a small holdfast in the hills, and then he thinks about the man because Robb thought the man was a wildling, and the man's sword was sworn to Mance Rayder, okay, who is the king beyond the wall. And now Bran is logically thinking of the wildlings. So it makes him think of a moment, and we don't have to have a flashback, but it did make Bran's skin prickle because he remembered the hearth tales old Nan told them. The wildlings were cruel men, she said, slavers and slayers and thieves. All right. And then we get some world building and exposition, but again, it is through his POV. So they consorted with giants, and ghouls stole children in the dead of night, and drank blood from polished horns. So what are we learning about? Oh, let me just read the last line. So, and their woman lay with others. I love that others is capitalized, and the reason it's capitalized is because it is a noun, and the others, that's world building. In the long night to sire terrible half-human children. All right. So what are we learning in this passage about Bran? We know that he has never encountered the wildlings, but he has heard stories about the wildlings, and his perspective, his position on the wildlings is that they are horrible, evil things, not even people, because it says terrible half-human children. So Bran's perspective, his position, is that wildlings were cruel men, because man as in like creature, right? But they were slavers, slayers, and thieves, all right? And they consorted with giants and ghouls and stole girl children in the dead of night. So they're monsters, right? And drank blood from polished horns, and their women lay with the others in the long night, right? All of this is creating. So I talk about this in my videos. You got to create a position, and you don't have to literally spell it out. You don't have to be like, my position is that the Giants are the better team than the Jets. What's happening here is we're creating world building, character development, specifically for this. The first line, this is plot. The man had been taken outside a small holdfast in the hills. That's moving. We get some information. The plot was we know where they're going to be. They're in the hills, in a small holdfast in the hills specifically. So now we know where they're going. And then this is all character and world. This is world building. This is just character. It made Bran's skin prickle. He remembered the Hearthstone tales. This is character and world building. The wildlings were cruel men, she said, slaver. This is all world building. Has touch of character development because it's what he remembers her saying. They consorted with giants and ghouls and stuff like that. Again, this is world building with the POV of Bran. So it is, again, his position, his understanding of the wildlings. And of course, this is more world building. So there's one sentence of plot in the second passage, and then the rest is world building and character development. But again, for things to be truly happening, right? So it's not stuff is happening, but nothing is happening. You want it to be the story. You want the story to unfold through allowing every sentence to have either plot, character, or world building, or any variation of those three. Like some of these sentences are both character and world building. But if it's through the POV, it's always going to have a touch of character development because it's what they remember of the thing, it's what they're thinking of the thing, it's how they're experiencing the thing, and that creates story. Plot is just a man is being tried by the king's to deal with the king's justice, and a group of brothers are heading that way to kill the dude. Like that's plot. And yet it still counts, but it doesn't create story. So that becomes stuff is happening, but nothing is happening. Stuff is happening, but nothing is happening must have one or more of those three elements: plot, character development, world building within every sentence, but it also must go through the emotional experience of your characters. And that's what makes it palpable. That's why these first two passages, two paragraphs of their prose from the prose, are moving through something. Okay. They not only does it narratively move through the thought of Bran, again, the first thing Bran recognizes is the morning had dawned clear and cold with a crispness that hinted at the end of summer. Right? And now that he recognizes the atmosphere and the environment, he's thinking about like, where are they going? You know, like, why are they out here in the cold? Well, they set forth at daybreak to see a man beheaded, 20 in all, and Bran rode among them, nervous with excitement. So the air is influencing him. He's nervous and excited at the same time. And then he's like, wow, this is literally the first time I've been considered old enough to go out here to watch my father with my brothers behead somebody. You know, I'm only 7, and it's the 9th year of summer, so I'm younger, right? I haven't witnessed winter yet. I've been in a 9-year summer. So this is all going through Bran's head, and that's what makes that prose so good. And yeah, there is telling with nervous with excitement. There is telling the morning had they set forth at daybreak to see a man beheaded. Is telling 20 in all is telling. And Bran rode among them nervous with excitement. Now that entire sentence is not telling, it's showing, even though it is technically telling. But the reason it becomes showing is because it's how he's thinking. It's the process of what Bran is doing. Right. And this is how, when you're looking at your own sentences, you have to make sure, am I moving the plot forward? If not, is there character? If not, is there world building? If there is one or more of those three elements, is this through the POV, the emotional POV of a character? An emotional POV is just the process. It doesn't necessarily have to be nervous with excitement. It's the process. How is somebody experiencing the unfolding of information? The man had been taken outside a small holdfast in the hills. So Bran is thinking about where they are going, which is a small holdfast in the hills. They are going to a man that's going to be beheaded. So now he's thinking that, like, oh my God, this man is a wildling. This will be the first time I see a wildling. Rob thought he was a wildling, and the fact that the guy is sworn to Mace Raider, who is the king beyond the wall. This is great. Oh God, that made that made my skin prickle, because like, these people are horrible. Old man told me that these wildlings were cruel, evil slayers, and like, all they do is consort with giants and ghouls, and they steal children. They are horrible. And then they make half human children. So it's not necessarily emotional in the sense of like, every little piece is like, his heartbeat behind his chest rattling out his rib cage. Like, it doesn't have to be that. The process of his narrative through line, each thing is logically following the line before it, and it moves the narrative forward. So this becomes a quick read. All right. Okay. Let me do this last paragraph. Last paragraph. All right. Okay. But the man they found bound hand and foot to the holdfast wall, awaiting the king's justice, was old and scrawny, not much taller than Rob. All right. Oh, wait. All right. But the man they found, okay, had hand and foot to the holdfast wall, awaiting the king's justice. So this is plot. Okay, it's dictating the plot. Let's see. He had lost both ears and fingers to frostbite, and he dressed in black, the same as the knights. Watch. Except that his fur. Okay. All right. So. Okay. Yeah, this is him. Okay. Now we know that this is through the POV of Bran. Not only is the two passages before this one, Bran, but the breath of a man and horse mingled steam in the cold morning air as his lord fought this is Bran, Lord's father had the man cut down from. Okay, so that means this is still in Bran's POV. So Bran is now seeing the man they found bound hand and foot to the holdfast wall, awaiting the king's justice. All right. And this man was old and scrawny, not much taller than Rob. So this is interesting because it's plot, but it's also character development in the sense that this is what Bran is noticing. Of all the things a 7-year-old could have noticed, or what is he, 9? Yeah. Of all the things a 7-year-old could have noticed, he notices that the man is bound hand and foot to the holdfast, that the guy is scrawny, but also, he's not much taller than my brother. This is character. These are this is, I know it sounds like, who thinks about these things? But when you're writing, allow the POV of the character to naturally move through logical positions. What would a 7-year-old pay attention to? Well, this is the first shock time. This is the first time they're seeing this, right? To Rob, if it was Rob would walk right in and he'd probably be like, maybe he doesn't notice, he doesn't care that the man is bound. It might just be like, take the prisoner, like, he watches the bound prisoner because we know he's bound, but we don't care that it's his hands and feet because maybe Rob has seen this many times, right? So Rob might be like, the bound prisoner shivered in wait for the king's justice. That might be something Rob is noticing because Rob is older. So he might be noticing more of the emotional truth of the character and less of the physical thing he is seeing, right? Bran is physically seeing the thing that is the horror, which is like he's never seen this kind of scrawny, bound man. And he's noticing like the physicality of the guy and not necessarily the emotion of the guy because he's 7. Okay. So it continues with that kind of feel, like that way Bran might think. He had lost both ears and fingers to frostbite, and he dressed all in black, the same as a brother of the Night's Watch, except that his furs were ragged and greasy. This is what a 7-year-old would notice. He would notice the little details. He would notice the first sight of this is an extreme moment for him. All right. But we also learned something very important about Bran. This is character development and world building. We learn that he knows about the Night's Watch, but we don't answer what the Night's Watch is, but we do create questions. And we know that we have to answer those questions later. We also have to answer questions about what the others are, even though we have a perspective of it, it isn't the truth of who the wildlings are or the others. It's just a biased character perspective. It's their position on it. But mentioning the Night's Watch is interesting because we don't know what that is, but it was mentioned. The other thing is we're creating the position. Remember, Bran's position is the wildlings are freaky. So you have to challenge that position. And he does. George R.R. Martin challenges the position of the wildlings are horrible people. They're monsters. They're half creatures. And then what is the challenge? You learn, no, they're just people that live on the opposite side of the wall, and they are the true Northerners. And, they're all, one of them is a redhead, you know nothing, Jon Snow. Right? So that challenges the setup, the perspective of Bran. Okay. So there you go. We looked at that. We broke it down. We got some, okay. We learned that just this 3 passages, okay, the 3 prose, we learned that stuff is not just happening, okay? We learned that the plot is moving through the characters and we are developing the world. In 3 passages, the world has been developed naturally through the characters' POV and emotional interest of what they logically would be experiencing, paying attention to, or the limited knowledge they know of something, i.e., of the wildlings are evil. And so nothing was pure exposition. So it didn't stop the POV. It didn't stop the plot. It didn't just go, all right, let's describe things for description's sake. Because again, you don't want to just do this. This doesn't do anything. This is just somebody using their ability to write and create adjectives and descriptive words and just be like, the morning had dew clear and cold with the Christmas that hinted at the end of summer. Oh, wait, I added that to make it. There we go. If you find yourself writing passages like this, where the morning had dewed clear and cold with a Christmas that hinted at the end of summer, horses neighed, and the far sight of endless land covered the hills with grass and patches of trees. The sky blue with a cold touch of gray lingered in the distance. Now, by the way, as an idea of logic, this sentence would actually go here because of the logic. So lingered in the distance. What is it? The distance. Now we want to build it. The morning had dawn and cold, and it was Christmas, right? But you could do it the other way too. Doesn't matter. But this is all description, so it doesn't do anything. There's no plot. There's no character. There's no world building. Even if I said the morning had dew clear and cold in the fields of Westeros with a like even that. It's not through the POV of a character, so it's no longer story. It's just exposition for exposition's sake, which makes it pure exposition, which then falls under the stuff is happening, but nothing is happening. So what is happening here? Well, the morning had dawned clear and cold in the fields of Westeros with a Christmas that hinted at the end. But nothing is really happening because it's not through the emotional experience of a character. All right. That's why they say maintain a POV. Okay. I hope that helps. All right. Now, real quick before I end it though, the challenging positions and choices we are setting up positions to challenge them. You don't have to challenge every position or choice right away, but I think yeah, I didn't get to the dialogue. So, by the way, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 passages, and we haven't even gotten to dialogue yet. So that's something to, don't feel like you have to jump right into dialogue. It's up to you, But there is a moment where Robb says, "Don't look away, Father will know." So that creates right. So you're challenging his naivete, his youth, his fear, his everything that's been built up here. He's nervous and excited. His skin prickled at the idea of the wildlings, right? So we're challenging that position by saying, "Don't look away, don't do it. Father will know." All right. Let's I want to say a couple things real quick. So, since the release of Game of Thrones, the landscape of epic fantasy writing has definitely evolved. The genre itself has broadened, and prose style have shifted to align with changing reader expectations. The style of writing is always evolving. 1996 was a long time ago. Damn, it was a long time ago. All right. And you have to remember when Martin published Game of Thrones, the depth of character complexity and moral ambiguity, wow, ambiguity set a new standard. However, dyslexia. However, contemporary epic fantasy has trended towards more diverse voices and faster pacing, often seeking to appeal to broader audiences. This doesn't mean that you need to do that. Prose today might be tighter with leaner descriptions, less tolerance for meandering details, and more dynamic viewpoints, reflecting a shift towards accessibility and immediacy. There has also been an emphasis on varied perspectives and inclusive narratives, challenging traditional tropes. So, understanding how these shifts have impacted modern epic fantasy can definitely help you as a writer decide which tools from Martin's toolkit to adapt, adopt, or innovate for your own stories. Now, just because Martin used to write like this doesn't mean that he definitely writes like this. Still, as always, we're always evolving as writers. And 96 to now is how many years? 2025? 2025 minus 99. That's 29 years. That's 29 years ago. If he hasn't evolved his writing, his style, even though it's taken him forever to write, all writers evolve. Their voices change, and the way they present things and ideas do change. Um, do you have to tighten or keep? No. As long as you follow the rules of maintaining every line, including dialogue, should have one or more of these elements: plot, character, or world building. And then the other thing is to keep it from just being pure exposition or pure description, allow it to be through the POV of a character. And now the description is through how they are perceiving the information: sound, sight, whatever. Sight is the field expanded all the way to the horizon. That's sight, right? So them seeing that specifically in the word choices is how they are perceiving it, right? And if you're writing two different character POVs, one character might be like noticing the birds, whereas the other character might be annoyed at the birds or not noticing the birds at all. And you could do the same scene from one character being like, wow, the birds are beautiful tonight. I love that. I love the sound of the blah, 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 blah bird, right? And then you could do that same moment with those characters from a different POV, and the character could just be like, I just want to get some sleep, and all I hear are those damn birds. And and maybe they won't even talk about the beautiful song or the melody of the whistle that radiated and reflected onto my soul. It reminds me of when my mother once would sang to me because I was cold. I had a cold and I couldn't fall asleep, and she held me in her arms. Meanwhile, this other character is just like, I just want to get some sleep. I hate these damn birds. POV, keep that in mind. Final quick thoughts. Analyzing a work like Game of Thrones isn't about trying to replicate what George R. Martin did, but about understanding the decisions that helped create such an impactful story. Crafting your prose is a journey, and it takes time to discover your unique voice as a writer. So embrace the process, experiment with different styles, and don't shy away from thinking outside the box. Our job as writers is to create the strongest version of our ideas. And the way we do that is by understanding what has come before us, where it is today, and how you can use your author voice to develop and elevate your style in a way that allows you to stand on your own in the future. Writing is writing, but how you write is the power of difference between you and another author. You don't have to replicate what has come or what is here or what will be. You need only allow the stories you write to form on the page. Now, remember, it's all made up in the end, fantasy or otherwise. So have fun with it. It's fake, it's made up. You have the power to shape your world and the freedom to change anything at any point. Horses can have bullheads. It's fake. So keep writing, keep refining, and always be open to where your creativity might lead. Now, the next video in this series, we're actually going to look at Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson. We're going to look at the first three passages in chapter 1, and we're going to do the same thing we did here. We're going to look at it, we're going to analyze it, and see how he uses his words. All right. Question: which element of George R.R. Martin's prose stands out the most to you? Is it his world building, his characters, or something else entirely? I'd obviously really love to hear your thoughts on that. Let me know in the comments below. And if you haven't done so already and you're liking what you see on this channel, please subscribe and hit the bell icon so you don't miss out. And of course, thumbs up always helps the channel. With that said, keep developing the right mindset. I'll see you next time. Bye.